Chris has been studying, restoring, and colouring the photographs from the Holtermann Collection for over 2 decades. However, the comment is often made that by adding colour is a desecration or a somewhat vandalisation of these beautiful old photos. And while he can see the argument for this, and no one appreciates these stunning images in their raw format more than Chris, he also points out the fact that if the photographer would have had the option of using colour film over black and white more than 150 years ago, then the decision would probably be pretty clear. Crystal clear. And as these images are indeed grayscale, or black and white, most of the observer's attention is immediately drawn to the central focal point of the photograph, leaving the surrounding details lost in a tangled web of miscellaneous black and white shapes that the human brain has no time to process, before then usually losing interest altogether. And while it is easy to opt for the one-click AI button colouring method, Chris is otherwise committed to his self-taught technique, which involves hours, if not days, and sometimes even months, meticulously colouring each individual detail of the photograph, piece by piece. By using this method, no single speck is left untouched. And it's amazing, the things he sees.
On a cold and damp winter's day in 1872, Henry Beaufoy Merlin set up his camera to photograph 2 men in the street at Hill End. What he actually captured was the little ghosts of Clarke Street. It's a cold, bleak day on Clarke Street. The last of the golden leaves have long since dissolved into their muddy graves for another season, not to be resurrected in full green foliage until the first signs of spring, still a further 3 months away. The sun struggles to fight through the frozen clouds that released a light dusting of overnight snow, which has now melted into the almost impassable pools of mud and water along the street. By nightfall, the road and ground will have transformed into permafrost. It's only mid-June, and it's only going to get colder. Merlin's hands are so cold that they are shaking uncontrollably. He scuffles with his lenses and equipment. His assistant, a young man named Charles Bayliss, loyally watches on, all the while exhaling large plumes of lukewarm steam from his lungs into his own cupped, frozen hands. He curses this damn place that only months before was unbearably hot, but is now counting the days for their return. But first, there is a job to do. And finally, when the job was done, the picture developed, and only when Merlin was satisfied that he managed to capture the 2 men in the street, it was then catalogued and carefully stored away and forgotten for almost 80 years. It's only been in recent years that it has now been discovered that Merlin, Baylis, and the two men were not alone in the picture. If you look closely, you will see what appears to be the apparition of a little girl gliding effortlessly down the hill towards the street, leaving a ghostly transparency in her wake. She, or it, is wearing a checkered shawl. You can make out her bloomers, socks and boots. Her bonnet that draws the ghostly mist behind covers her head, and peering out from underneath, an almost transparent and featureless face, except her large black eyes that are focused directly forward, almost contemplating a mischievous intention. While not appearing as sinister, but still a little unnerving, the next of our little ghosts of Clarke Street can be found a lot further down the road. At first, you can really only see what appears to be a little girl, leaning against a post. There is nothing untoward about this image, as she appears to be a solid matter, and therefore was actually standing there when the picture was taken. But who was she talking to? The further we draw back from the image, the more you can make out the eerie formation of a little boy. Perhaps he is the spirit of the boy who drowned in the dam just a few weeks before and is now trying to cross over to the other side with the help of the girl. Or is he trying to convince her to come back to the dam to take a swim? Did Merlin manage to unwittingly capture two of the many little souls that wandered lost through the streets of this harsh, inhospitable place all those years ago? Or is there a plausible and logical explanation for these little ghosts of Clarke Street?
Okay, creepy voiceover guy. Yes, there is a plausible and a logical explanation, and it's called motion blur. If you have watched enough of Chris's videos, or have the slightest knowledge of this type of photography, then you would have heard this terminology many times. If not, motion blur is the result of long exposure times during the photographic process of taking these pictures. Each photo could take from 8 to 10 seconds long to capture a picture, meaning that the slightest movement during this time would result in blurring images, particularly for animals, and especially for children. So, while you have to admit that these little kids do appear a little spooky, it was nothing more than their fidgety movements and motion blur. In fact, a perfect example of this can be explained in the so-called spirit of the drowned boy. As you can clearly see, the girl in the picture has the support of the post, therefore maintaining an almost motionless posture. Meanwhile, the little boy is otherwise freestanding, and what little boy of this age do you know that can keep still for more than 1 second? The apparition seemingly gliding down the hill, leaving the ghostly trail, can be explained as a little girl who just happened to appear from the right side of the frame, probably just after Merlin had already commenced the exposure. Her dramatic trail behind her is the result of the swiftness in which she was walking, possibly eager to rendezvous with the other two children further down the street, but hopefully not to go swimming. If you recall the creepy voiceover guy,
I have a name, you know.
Saying that apart from the little ghosts,
My name is Kevin.
there were only two men featured in the photograph of Clarke Street. It's obvious that these gentlemen were the intended subjects of the image, as they managed to maintain the 10-second exposure time to achieve the photographer's intention. But if you look close enough, and excluding the little kids, you will see at least a further 10 more people that were going about their everyday business when the picture was taken. Including the 2 men, the 3 kids, and now these further 10, there were actually 15 people crammed into this photo. And as mentioned, it's not until these images are thoroughly analysed in order to colour every single aspect that these tiny details that have previously gone unnoticed for over 150 years begin to tell their own stories. I hope you have enjoyed the second episode of The Things You See, Part 1. Please stay tuned for Part 2 of this episode for a closer and more worldly look at this iconic view of Clarke Street in the winter of 1872.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
watching.
watching. Shut up, Kevin.
Sorry.